Hello and welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. This is our website's podcast where we publish full interviews from our site's articles and sometimes release exclusive episodes. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, Corneill, the vocalist and guitarist of the English Southwest alt-country rock band Young Martyrs, discusses forming the band after the success of his previous project CENTERFOLDS, how they made a name for themselves during the pandemic, how their latest single Everyone Else Disappears is actually from their deleted second album Time Is Not On Their Side from 2023, why that album actually got deleted, how they're planning on re-releasing it this year, their upcoming toured album, and much more. In the interview, Tom mentions that a huge part of the band's push is getting people to sign up for their mailing list. With that in mind, there is a link in the description of this episode to where you can sign up for that. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Hey,
Tom, how's it
Kevin.
going?
Oh, yeah, it's good. Sorry. My phone slipped. How you doing?
I'm all well, how are you?
Yeah, really good. Really good, thank you. Yeah. What are you up to today other than talking to me?
I have another interview at 6, and that's kind of my day then. It's kind of like right up a different interview I've had on the back burner for a bit afterwards, so
Got you.
the grind never stops.
Yeah, I know it well. I know it well.
Now, have you been finding, I guess, like doing I guess the publicity side of things?
I mean, it's wild, isn't it? It's I really enjoy this stuff. But it's funny how when you have something new to talk about as a band or an artist, um, you can talk to people about it, and then the people you've talked to about it might write a story, a feature, a review, do an interview or something like that. And then when you see that that's been posted somewhere, then you get to talk about that to your followers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this self-perpetuating thing that just goes on and on. So it's lots, it's a lot. As a band, we can go for periods where we don't really have a lot to say, where social media is concerned and mailing lists and things like that. You're sort of thinking, like, when are we next going to have something to talk about? Because we're just existing right now, working on songs, but we don't have enough new stuff to share or whatever. And then when you do a release and people are kind enough to talk about it, suddenly it's like, geez, I've got so much stuff.
Yeah.
I need to post my stuff. Then I need to see who's done something about it, and I need to capture that, and I need to post about the fact that they've done that, and it's just, yeah, it's sort of this never-ending cycle. But I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing because I've spoken to other artists about this too, and like it's this weird thing where like you're in this perpetual kind of PR mode with social media. It's strange because like I think of like I guess like before social media, you'd only hear from acts when they were doing like a tour or when they were releasing an album. And that was kind of
Yeah,
the only time you see them in the PR cycle. But now with social media, it's like if you're not active consistently, people seem to, I don't know, think that you're inactive or something like that, even though you might be working at things behind the scenes. It's very strange, isn't it? Because like it just feels like you're
yeah.
never off.
It is really strange, and it's really difficult. I think about this often. I I mean, to be, but I don't want to get too negative because there's lots to be happy about right now, but it does suck. The place that we're in at the moment, where being in the music industry requires you not only to be a musician, which in itself doesn't just mean, that means having to write and having to, there's having to perform, how to, perfect your performance and maintain your equipment and all the rest of it. Like that, it's a full-time job in itself, but now we also have to be PR experts and or act like kind of mini celebs, talking like people care, which a lot of people haven't even heard of you yet, but you've got to, you put your message out there as if you're the biggest thing in the world, and it's so constant. I wish that it wasn't that way, but I think you can kind of fight it. Like I often say, I'd give anything to sort of exist in a place where we could just get, but where we didn't have to be in that race of having to constantly use social media all the time, every day, to remind people that we are here, where we could just actually, if that none of that existed, and we could just go out as a band, and the job was to try and be the best band, and if you are decent, people will come and watch you. I'd love to go back to that, but you can't fight it. This is
No.
where we are, and if you're not on that treadmill, I guess, with everybody else, then everyone else is going to get seen and you're not. And I certainly haven't come up with a way around that. So you kind of just have to swallow it and go, okay, this is today's musician. This is what it looks like, really, I guess.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's very relatable to a lot of people. Like I said, I've just spoken to so many artists about that. About, as you were mentioning, kind of wearing those different hats of, like, today I'm a musician, today I'm a PR guy, today I'm a social media guy.
Yeah.
Do you find that actually kind of like that you learn any like skill sets from that too? Because like I think a lot of people, like, when they use the social media, it starts off just kind of like, like, what do people want, and then you try and like learn as you go. But like you said, I mean, it just diverts so much attention from the art and so much attention away from the songwriting and things like that. Do you find you have a good sort of balance in terms of like priorities and things like that?
I think so, but it's taken years to find that balance. It's really, and some days, balance isn't about being dead center all the time. Balancing is about always being a little bit too much this way or a little bit too much that way, and trying to constantly find your way back to the kind of center point. And I think we've just about got there, but it's taken an awful lot of learning and a lot of being petulant and sort of fighting against the system and wishing we didn't have to do social media. In terms of stuff that we've learned, I mean, it's me that does most of our social media stuff. I think you learn. My learning curve kind of went, okay, accepting that social media it is a necessary part of what we're doing. I now understand that we have to be making certain types of posts and presenting ourselves in a certain type of way if we want it to get seen, if we want the algorithm to recognize it, if we want it to be re-shared by people and things like that. Sort of recognizing that, okay, you have to play the game to some degree, and then kind of reaching a point where you're wondering, can I? Like, I'm not prepared to go any further into this. Like, any bending any further to sort of fit this mold that is sort of this safe Instagrammable mold. If I go any further down that route, I'm just doing this to please somebody else, and the artistic integrity is taken out of the equation, and I lose myself, So that there is. I have friends who are extremely good on social media, and sort of got in early with Instagram, and understood how to be really good at it, and they've got great big followings and things. And I didn't really get into it till a bit later. I missed the boat a little bit, and they will give me advice on how, if you didn't put that vintage filter on it, the algorithm will like it more. And if
Yeah.
you remember to do this hashtag, then this will happen. And if you keep it to this length, then it's more likely to get seen by more people. Or if you lengthen it to this, or what, and I get it, and I'm grateful that there are people who care enough to give this advice, but also sometimes I just don't want to. And
Yeah.
being, doing what we do is about expressing what you want to express in the way that you want to express it. And for me, that even comes down to social media. So we we put things out on the socials in ways that I know are not going to perform as well as what someone else is posting, but I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
so I know that you're stopping short of potential success, to a point for that particular post, reel, whatever it might be. Um, but I'm not prepared to care that much, and to hell with the consequences. I hope that makes some sort of sense.
Absolutely. No, I get exactly what you're saying. Actually, one thing I wonder if you agree with me on this. One thing I've talked about before is I actually think the live performance is often where you kind of garner the most fans, because people can come across things on social media or on platforms like Spotify or YouTube or whatever, but I think really seeing an act live and kind of having somewhat of a personal connection in that sense is really where you kind of garner more hardened fans who are actually interested in kind of coming back and sticking around and listening to the new stuff. Do you agree with that, or do you feel like that's still the best way for artists to get seen and for artists to accrue a fan base?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think seeing you performing your songs live, I can't speak for all musicians. Some people are more in it for the recording.
Yeah.
Aspect of it. And I mean, we've had a guitarist in our band right at the start who was really not that fussed about performing. He just liked to make music. But for me, and I think most performing musicians that I know, getting on stage and actually doing it, showing the people what you wrote and crafted and refined, that's what it's all about. And there's never going to be a better way to enjoy that music than actually seeing the act live. I think when it comes to online stuff, I really love I mean, don't get me wrong. If I've got I spend way too much time in the car driving around the country from gig to gig, and I listen to Spotify, and hearing the album versions of people's tracks is something magic because you get to hear all the intricacies of what they're up to, all the little hooks and things they put in there, the overdubs that they can't do live. There's little bits of magic fairy dust or whatever. But
Mhm.
when I'm consuming content on YouTube or any of the social media stuff, it's when I catch someone doing something live. That is the thing for me that's like, this is the closest I can get to sitting in a room watching this person. Foy Vance is a huge, huge one for me. He is, I mean, he seems to have a great team around him in terms of you've got to when you watch this online content, you can see often that the music is live, but some artists have managed to get a really good videographer, a really good cameraman, really good audio recording, someone who's treated it for coloring and stuff. And you don't realize necessarily that what you're watching is actually, it's the music is live, but the visuals, it's edited to look really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. That costs money and that costs time, and that means having the right resources around you. And Foy Vance is great at that. Everything he does appears to be 100% natural, and musically it is absolutely, that's totally live. But I'd kill to have any of our reels, looking, or TikTok looking that nice. But this is the point where I think you just have to go, I can't afford to care about that, so I'm just going to post me raw, me playing a guitar, singing. I can add a bit of reverb. I've got an app that does that, but beyond that, I don't have a cameraman living under the stairs. I
Yeah.
don't have, I don't have the money to, I don't have the time to constantly book in with someone and do all this stuff because, life's busier than that. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure I answered your question there, Kavanagh. Sorry, I
No,
went off a
I
bit.
think you did. Like, yeah, no, I think it's one thing actually because Glastonbury was just last weekend. And I was like looking at all the festival footage that like was put up afterwards, and it's like, yeah, it's really I don't know. I think it's really even that's still like a really good way of introducing I think the new artists because like and even like sometimes I'm listening to artists that I know by reputation but I haven't really delved into their work so much and I just kind of like listen to the live footage as it pops up and I think it is a really great way of integrating as you were mentioning. And one thing I was interested in asking you actually because you kind of just briefly mentioned there about having a guitarist who wasn't too fussed about doing live stuff and just wanted to record it. I mean, if I'm correct, I think Young Martyrs has been around for a little over a decade now. So, do you think that's an important thing to try and like not only accrue like members who share the kind of music that you want to do, who share the same kind of interest in making the music that you guys want to do, but also have the same interest in terms of like this is our kind of mission statement, here's what we want to do in terms of performing live, in terms of doing gigs. Was that something that like was very important when it came to kind of conceptualizing this project?
That's such a good question. Actually, we've only been together for 5 years, but two of us have been in a band. Myself and Rich, who was our bassist for the first two albums, he's now our lead guitarist. We had been in a band previously, so we've been in a band together for over a decade. But this one has only been 5 years, and I absolutely, Kavanagh, to try and answer your question instead of waffling a lot. Yeah, I
I think
think
you've
it
been
is.
answering my questions fine, by the way, just for the
Okay,
record.
fine. I have a tendency to go off on one. Um,
No, no, I enjoy
yeah,
it.
I think I've definitely come around to the fact that 100% it's without doubt you have to. This is part of the reason it's so hard to get anything done as a band, because even once you've got all the ingredients right within the band, then you have to rely on some luck and the right person seeing you at the right time, who's connected to a record company or whatever, someone
Mhm.
who can make you blow up, as they say. But actually, when we started, um, I myself and Rich had come off the back of another band called CENTERFOLDS. We'd been together about 13 years, and we had nearly made it, in inverted commas. We'd nearly got there. We went through a phase where we were getting played on Six Music and Radio 2, and we had our music on Hollyoaks and a bunch of different TV programs, and we played Glastonbury a couple of times, and we did all this big stuff. And then, unfortunately, we'd never quite got there, and at this point, our bassist passed away, our best friend Alex.
Sorry, dear.
And thank you, yeah. And and to be honest, it was kind of, it never really worked after that. And then when we put Young Martyrs together, it was in 2020, having left Centerfolds behind. It was in the lockdown, and really, with the world in the state that it was, with the pandemic and things, not knowing what was coming, I didn't know what the band was going to turn out to be. So really, all I wanted was some friends who I thought might dig the tunes that I'd written and enjoy making some noise. And we had to rehearse in either massive spaces where we were a really long way away from each other, which was quite funny in itself, because we're all being really well behaved, because some of us had different businesses we were running and stuff. No one wanted to get into trouble, and for
Sure.
health reasons. Or we were rehearsing in Simon's barn, our guitarist barn, where it was open air, so all we had was a roof to stop the rain hitting us, but it was outside, and so I hadn't asked the question yet, what does everyone want at the end of this? It was just a case of, let's get together and let's see what we can do. And it wasn't really until we'd come a bit further, we got to the point where, okay, we're going to need to be busier now, because people have actually started listening. We actually, in our humble little way of an emerging act, we started to get a few followers and get bigger gigs and things like that, and realized that not everyone necessarily wanted to go on that path. My pursuit is commercial success for the band. I want people to hear the songs, and I want everyone to be able to just do this full time for the rest of our lives, and that's all we do. But we had to face facts that not everyone was up for that. So we've had a couple of reshuffles since then, but three of us are still the founder members of the band, and we've just got a new member who's coming to play bass for us, who in fact used to be in Centerfolds, the old band, with us. They were such a really, really different band to what we're doing now, but enough time has passed. I think we've got a shot at doing Young Martyrs without it sounding like the old band.
I have to ask, so you mentioned there that the project kind of started in 2020, and that was also the year that the first album came out, the self-titled debut. So how did you get that, like the turnaround rate so quick during a lockdown?
Well, I guess we didn't have a lot else to do at that time, I suppose, in a way. We were, and I don't think anyone would choose to go back to the lockdown days, but I think lots of people would agree that there were certain aspects of it that actually we really needed at the time, like the sort of putting pause on life. And I think that was true for us in a lot of ways. It gave us time to refine it. I actually had a bunch of songs. I wrote a couple of new tunes for the album, but part of the reason for putting the band together was I had this book of songs that I'd written over the years that they'd never fitted any other band that I've been in, and I thought it's time to do this now. So the songs were mostly already there, and then in terms of the rest of the band learning their parts and getting it all together, I think it was just the case that we didn't have as much to do because it was lockdown, so people didn't have distractions. So, you know, I don't want to mention the virus really, but some of the side effects of the overall pandemic and the lockdown and stuff were actually really helpful in us doing that super quick.
Yeah, no, I know. I've spoken to other artists too who've had their projects kind of disrupted, obviously, by the COVID-19 pandemic. And what was interesting was that it really did seem like, as you mentioned, that kind of like pause that we all had to kind of go through during that time. It was either something where a lot of people were like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore. Like it's just too grating with this going on," or else it kind of sparked people to kind of go, "Okay, I'm going to start a new project, or I'm going to write new music."
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting time. I mean, it really did kind of turn things on its head a little bit, and either it saw the dissolvement of a lot of projects or it saw the birth of a lot of projects. It's interesting in that sense. Part of me hopes we never see it like that again, but
Well, quite.
I can't help but acknowledge that, for a lot of creatives, it was beneficial.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, yeah. With you on everything that you just said there, Kavanagh. I mean, the other thing. I mean, I don't want to be uh, controversial without a reason, but I mean, the other thing about turning an album around quickly is that there's a lot of. It has to take a certain amount of time if you want to do it properly. But also, when I hear about how long it takes acts who are professionals, who have hits, who are, you know, commercially, financially successful, and they've got an album to write and they've got nothing else to do in terms of paying the bills. I'm always amazed at how long it seems to take. I know the 1975 were booked into we couldn't get into Real World, the album where we recorded our second album, I can't remember if this was with my previous band or with this band, but there was a period we couldn't get in because 1975 had the place booked out allegedly for months and months to write this album. And I just remember thinking, why, like, the think a lot of acts that sort of came up as the music industry that we used to have, where people were still buying CDs and things like that, was just on its way out and just, sort of dying, because now it's virtually all streaming. And
Yeah.
vinyl sales is more, that's a merchandise thing rather than a serious indication of record sales. um I just can't understand why it takes people so long. I don't. I feel like some of those. I think people have expectations that there was so much money in the industry at one time that they could just afford to book a place for months and months and months on end and take all that time to write the album. Whereas for us, it's a case of, look, some of the band have other full-time jobs that they have to do and kids to look after when they're not in their full-time jobs, and we have this minuscule amount of time to write. I'm the only full-timer in the band at this point in time who's working on the music. We've got almost no time to do this, and it really lights a fire under you to get things done. And we've been able to turn things around so much quicker than what I hear from other acts. And I almost think it's like, if someone says, right, here's a deadline, you'll do it. You'll just
Yeah.
find a way to do it. I think that's often the way it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something I want to ask about. Is actually like kind of wrangling people up because, well, actually, when you started Young Martyrs, so what was the kind of, I guess, like the pitch to the other members when you kind of started?
What was the pitch? I think I sent some demos of the songs that I had. Do you mean my pitch to the other band members?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like in terms of like accruing the bands for this new
Yeah.
project, because as you mentioned, you'd already been in other projects and had this songbook that you were trying to create. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I guess I sent them some demos of the types of songs, and also I created a Spotify playlist. And I've still got it somewhere that called Young Martyrs Listen to This.
yeah,
And the idea was, see, I don't really like the idea of being a dictator where it comes to telling everyone what we should be sounding like. But in order to get the project off the ground, it felt really important to say, look, the sound that I have in mind for this album, or for this, we didn't know we were going to get to record it yet, but for this first body of work, the stuff that we're going to work on initially for the first gig, whenever that may be, is kind of an Americana, alt country, sort of Eaglesy, Ryan Adams type sound. Um, and it's really important to me that we embrace that. It's all, it's lots of denim and guitars and harmonies, and it's that's kind of the vibe. And everyone got it, and everyone I think what was really important was making the brief as clear as possible to say, look, this is our starting point, because we need a really clearly cohesive product to be able to tell people what it is that we do. And I think that really helped, because when we finished the album, the first thing we had played on the radio, I sent out the songs to loads of people, and it was country stations that picked up on the first song. It was just the end of summer from our first album. It wasn't an official single because we didn't really know what we were doing, but in terms of releasing singles, I'd never done that before. But that got picked up and played by lots of country stations, and we weren't trying to be a country band, but it certainly leaned in that direction. And it kind of proved to me that it worked to say to everyone, right, this is the sound I've got in mind. That's what we ended up creating. And as time's gone on, now we have a sort of sound and an understanding of how each other works, and what the brief is. And so when someone brings an idea in, it fits without anyone having to say, well, that doesn't sound very
Sure.
Americana or whatever. And in fact, some of the newest stuff isn't super. It's certainly not country music, but it's sort of in that area, you know.
Yeah, no, I noticed actually. We'll speak about your new single, "Everyone Else Disappears." But like from the singles you've been releasing quite recently, I do notice that evolution of sound. Do you think that's something that just kind of, as you mentioned, kind of occurs naturally? Where maybe at the beginning it's sort of more like, okay, we're going to use these sort of genres and these other artists as reference points, but as it goes on, as any project does, it becomes kind of more organic. Part of it is also, getting comfortable and acclimatizing to everyone's different music tastes and different songwriting styles. Has that kind of development just been a natural thing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it has been natural, but it hasn't been without having to stop and take stock every so often. Because you're absolutely right. It has been. So, for example, Rich, our now guitarist, formerly bassist, he comes from quite a very guitar-driven hard rock kind of 80s, early 90s, a bit of 70s. I mean, all of us listen to music from the 60s onwards, but in terms of
Mm.
like the core taste that we have, Rich is very much from a sort of Aerosmith type place. So I think if he said if you had to put a gun to his head and say who's your favorite artist ever, he'd probably say Aerosmith, and
Yeah.
that's a big old sound.
Well, even
Which
Aerosmith had like a huge evolution. If you listen to like the '70s to what they were doing in the '90s, it's like totally
Yeah,
different.
absolutely. Well, I definitely. And when Rich started to write things, and it was clearly sort of a bit of a step on from what we'd been doing previously. But it still kind of fit. And the way that I reflected in my head was I've always listened to a lot of Ryan Adams, and he goes through all sorts of phases, but he'll put them all on the same album. There'll be the quiet little broken down ones where it's just him and a guitar being sad and mournful or whatever, and then there's tunes on that track that sound like he's been listening to Whitesnake all weekend, and he's gone out and
Yeah.
made a really, chorus laden reverby 80s rock tune,
Yeah.
and I think, but it's all him, it's all recognizably him. And we've had people in and around the band in the 5 years we've been going who have not wanted us to change, really, to break away from that core. Starts with me and an acoustic guitar, and then we wrap the stuff around it, and it sounds very, that sort of honest, alt country, unpolished, intimate kind of sound. But when someone brings a song into, and sometimes it's me, someone just brings a song into rehearsal and goes, guys, I think we should play this, and
Yeah.
we listen to it, and it's like, that's a killer tune. We've just got to do it and trust that that is going to sound like this band, because it's these four people who are playing it. So it's all the same equipment as the other songs, you know, it's all the same voices, the same styles, the same, you know. So even though that there's a bit of an evolution in there, I think there's always going to be, you'll probably see bits of our past come back into it all the time, as well as a bit of new sound. I don't, we're not sort of deliberately on a journey to make it difficult for ourselves and constantly evolve and be looking for the new sound or anything like that. But we are, we really just make it all about the songs. Like if someone brings a song in and it's like, right, that needs to get recorded, then we make that work. And I suppose we haven't yet come to a point where we've ended up with a collection of songs that where one sticks out like a sore thumb, or you know, there's a clear split. There's half the songs sound like, I don't know, Motorhead, and half the songs sound like Joni Mitchell, whatever.
Sure.
We have never got to that point. It's sort of, for me anyway, unless I'm completely deluded, everything that we've got sounds like it's from the same wheelhouse. It's just like songs written on different days, you know?
Yeah. I wanted to ask about your second record then. So Time Is Not on Our Side came out in 2023. One thing I noticed was it's still for sale on your website, but I wasn't able to find it available digitally. Was that a deliberate decision or?
Ah, yeah. No, that was very much not deliberate. That's something that's happened quite recently. So we are one of many, many artists who've fallen victim to the bots. Um, so we had the album, basically it's, we were notified by our distributor. The distributor, for anyone not sure, is the person, the band pays a company to put your music on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music and Amazon Music and Deezer and all the, you know, there's, I don't know, there's like hundreds of different platforms,
Yeah.
but you pay one company to put them on all of those different streaming platforms. And that one company, in our case, removed our album, citing that there had been suspicious, possible fraudulent streaming activity.
Okay.
Um, and this is happening to so many people at the moment. It's, I have a feeling it will be in the press at some point, about what do we do about this. But essentially what it is, there are companies out there, the best I can tell, because the most frustrating thing is we're having to change distributor now, because we used one called TuneCore, who refused to talk to you about what the problem has been and explain exactly what transactions have been seen that are being seen as fraudulent. So the most annoying thing about it is we're playing guesswork and hoping that it doesn't happen again. But essentially, what we think has happened is, in order to get your songs hopefully into more people's ears, you can pay companies who are totally legitimate playlisting companies. You get ads for them on Instagram all the time if you're an artist, just saying, right, we've got these really, really popular playlists. We'll add your song to this playlist, and in among all the other great tracks that we've got, yours will be there, and that will get listened to by all the people who currently listen to that playlist. And it's really popular, and you pay us for having done that. I mean, it sucks a bit that we have to take that approach, but it's no different to, if you've got the money and you can afford to put your band's advert on a billboard or something like that, then you would do it because you want to
Yeah, of course,
advertise
yeah.
your band. So it's totally, it, you know, everyone's doing it. It's totally legit. Unfortunately, it seems some of those companies who you're paying to do the playlisting stuff have been using bots. So essentially, they're not really getting more people to listen to it. They have some mechanism for fake listeners to listen and therefore get your numbers up. And we've only used companies that are allegedly legit. And unfortunately, somehow we've fallen foul of it, and we can't have a conversation with anyone because no one will respond to your messages. And it's like I say, it's happening to a lot of people at the moment. But we do have a plan to. We found a UK distributor where there are actual people who we can talk to, who are likely to actually marketing of our music and help us a bit more instead of using one of these automated online companies. So we are going to be re-releasing that second album, probably sometime this summer, with hopefully a couple of bonus tracks and a little bit of new artwork. So it kind of gives us something new to talk about as well, even though some of the songs have been out for a while. Um, and then we have album 3 will be coming in, I think, January next year. So we'll be following pretty quickly with something brand new.
Perfect. And are the singles that are currently out now, are these going to be on the third record?
So the singles that we're releasing at the moment are actually tracks off the second album that
Okay.
were already on there. Now, but the funny thing is, we had always, when we released the second album, we spent our budget on the album itself, on getting the vinyl made up, on getting the merch done. We went on tour. It's a very expensive thing to do.
Mhm.
We kind of ran out of budget before we could. What we really would have liked is to have done more videos for the songs. So we had this plan that eventually, when we had some money in the bank, that we'd make some videos for the tunes that we liked best off the second album, even though the songs have been out for a while, just because we wanted to, just because it would be nice if you're on YouTube and you're following our band, you can see more of our stuff. Well, this whole album being taken down thing means that we now get to re-release those songs as brand new singles, because they don't exist online anywhere. So we've been doing that. So instead of just doing a new video, we've been given a bit of additional fanfare and talking it up, and it's been great because I'm having this conversation with you now about a new single that actually, if the album hadn't been taken down, that would have been a 2-year-old song,
Yeah.
that I
Yeah, I
wasn't,
get what
that
you're
we
saying.
wouldn't
Yeah.
be talking about that. So you have to kind of look at some of these circumstances and find a way to make it, make it a positive.
Yeah, no, actually, it's very fortuitous in a weird sense because it's almost given the record like a second wind.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it has. I mean, it really has. And because it's taken us a while to get the next album together, we recorded it in August this year. Um, it's it means we can legitimately talk about the other thing is, we've at the start of the year, we started, when in fact in last September when we toured, we did our first UK tour, and we started to gain more followers and got a bit more publicity and a little bit more of an injection of cash, um, some assistance from a fledgling record label and things, and we now have more people listening to our stuff than we did back then. So we're now able to release this music, which, you know, it's still new to a lot of people. So we're not ashamed to say, some of these songs had existed before, but here it is for you. Here's some technically brand new stuff. Enjoy it, and if people were already enjoying it, then they hopefully still do, and if people hadn't heard it before, then it's a brand new record. So it's it could be worse.
Perfect. One final thing I want to ask was actually you were mentioning like how quickly you got the first record out. There was obviously a 3 year gap between the first and the second. I was wondering, was writing for the second, like, because you already had the songbook as you were mentioning for the majority of the first record. So when you kind of go through that and you kind of have those songs now down, when you do the second record, is it like starting afresh, or did you have stuff? Are you kind of like perpetually writing, or was it just like, okay, we're starting, from scratch here?
It's a really good question. I think it didn't feel like starting from scratch. I think when we recorded the first album and we got to hear it back and it went online, and then some of the songs got played on the radio and things, it was a bit of a shock. We weren't, it all came together so quickly, as you say. We really weren't expecting it. We never had plans for a second album. We didn't know if we'd still be getting on by that point. The world was like um, changing, coming back to life after COVID and all that sort of stuff. And we hadn't really thought about it. We didn't start trying to write a new album. We just kept playing these first. Oh, that's the other thing I should mention. Although we made the album in 2020, because of COVID and lockdowns and things like that, we didn't get to gig for a really long time. And then
Yeah.
even when we did start getting bookings, they were frequently being cancelled because one member of staff had been tested positive, so I had to shut the venue down for another week, and what have you. It was all crazy times. So we actually, despite having the album out, we weren't gigging to begin with. So it took us, we almost our what would have been an album tour was sort of 2 years of us doing random gigs. And over time, Rich and I were writing songs in the background the whole time. And we had more songs than we needed, really. So it was a case of just picking as many as we thought we could get recorded, and saving up the money. That was the other thing, because, as I say, it's an expensive old business to when you're certainly getting yourself off the ground and you're self-funding everything.
Yeah.
Recording is expensive, rehearsing is expensive if you're doing it often as we are. We were all upgrading our gear because we were realizing that something quite special was happening. So we're all spending quite a lot of money on really tightening everything up everywhere we possibly could. And so we had to wait for the money to come together before we could go in a studio and record it. So that's why it took so long, really. But the music, just that kind of just happened. There's a few tunes that were very old ones from my songbook. Rich had written some new stuff. I was writing some new stuff. So we just kind of, as and when each song got finished, we were like, right, that one's going on, that one's going on. And anything that we didn't quite finish just got put on the back burner for the next album, which has. It's funny. I made that statement about albums taking that long to write. There are practical reasons why it takes a long time in between albums sometimes, but mostly that's just money. It's literally just having the money to be able to afford to record again. So we're in the fortunate position, of having the funding to do that at the moment. So we're excited about that.
Perfect. And actually, to tie it back to something we spoke about earlier, so you mentioned that, like, during that time you have a record out and you can't gig with it. How did you kind of like accrue the fan base or the listenership for that album during lockdown?
Sorry, and
How
say that
did you
again.
kind of accrue a listenership for that record during
Mhm.
lockdown when you can't go? And because like for a lot of artists, it's kind of like a matter of like gigging as much you can, recording demos so that you can send to promoters and to venues, but primarily gigging, accruing the fan base, and then releasing material when you have a listenership. But for an act like yourself who couldn't gig but had an album's worth of material, did you have to go through different methods to kind of get people to listen, or?
Oh, without doubt. Yeah, I mean, gigging is a tough one anyway. Even in normal times when there are lots of gigs, the fact is that people don't go out to gigs in the numbers that they used to once upon a time.
Yeah.
Certainly, when I was in my teens, which is a bit longer ago than I'd like to admit, we would go out to clubs to watch live music 2, 3 nights a week, and we didn't even check to see who was playing that night because you just knew you were going to have a good night, and you get to know acts because they were playing and you were out, and that's just how it worked. But these days, it it just that people just don't. It's ever since the financial crash in 2008, when people stopped going out so much and started to have house parties and things like that. It was that for me long before the pandemic happened, where numbers really dwindled of people just going out for the sake of it and seeing what was going on. So I to be honest, we gig when we can to hope to pick up a couple of new fans, but it's more about being able to play to existing fans who've been patient enough to wait to see you play. In terms of actually gaining new fans, the biggest thing has for me has always been doing everything you possibly can to get social media right and hoping that people will find you that way, and trying to contact as many radio stations as possible because they've got a bigger reach than you have. Because the other thing is, we some of our Bath is now at last. I've been living around Bath for 20 odd years, and it's finally got a bit of a proper music scene coming together. But Bristol, just down the road, which is where the other half of the band live, um, they've got a fantastic music scene.
Yeah.
But so many of the venues, though, have the bar is in one room, and the music is in a different room, often on a different floor of the venue. So anyone who's just coming in for a pint, they're not going to accidentally hear your band and go, God, this is good, I'm going to start following them. They have to know about you, and they have to pay money to go into a different room, away from the bar, away from their friends, away from everything. And that is one thing that music venues really, really get wrong. So to be honest,
It's similar here to Dublin, by the way.
right, there you
I relate to
go.
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me that no one's really clocked that yet. That it seems like such a barrier to picking up new fans. And the same venues will expect you, if they book you, to bring a load of fans in, but they're not
Yeah,
really doing anything to help you gain any new fans. So
sure.
it's a tricky one. But I think probably what the pandemic probably helped with was, because we literally couldn't rely on gigging, which I always thought, I'm not sure that's the best way to pick up new fans. There wasn't any other that we couldn't do that at all. So it made us better at just posting more stuff on social media and just relentlessly contacting radio stations, bloggers, anyone who is shouting into the void, because most of the time you don't get a response because these are all busy people
Yeah.
who've got everyone contacting them. But every so often somebody replies, and or someone follows you or whatever, and that's how we've done it really so far. It's been a very, slowly but surely type thing.
Yeah, one advice I'd give from the opposite end of that is I've given this advice before, but one thing I always tell people is if you don't get a response, just keep badgering them basically, because eventually they will have like an off week or something like that where they will, have like more time and not have as many people kind of contact them in a random week or so, and then
Yeah,
they'll stumble upon your because that's happened to me a lot where it's like, sometimes you're just inundated and you just kind of can't take new requests, and then every now and again like someone will go, "Hey, I sent you this email like 2 weeks ago. Would you?" And you're like, "Yeah, actually, I'm free if you want to do something." So that's one thing. But the other advice I
that's
always give
great.
people is if there's certain like publication that you want to get featured in, if there's a certain writer. I think a lot of times, if you can contact the individual writer rather than going through the major publication,
Publication. Yeah,
you might have success. Now it depends on the publication they write for, because some publications kind of allow their writers a certain amount of autonomy to write about what they want, but and others are more like, here's here's what we want you to cover. It depends on the publication that they write for, but I think often if you can just introduce yourself in that way and just say, "Hey, I've read this review, or I read this interview, and I'd like to, would you be interested in reviewing our record," or something like that. I think you can have success with that, just depending on whether the publication they're writing for allows them to cover new songs. It all
I love
depends.
that. That's really
Yeah,
helpful. Yeah, no, thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate that.
yeah. That's what I recommend to like any artist. Um, yeah. One other thing I wanted to say, just based on what you're saying, I always thought it'd be beneficial because like sometimes you go to pubs and they'll have like a musical act on, but they're only playing covers. And it's a great
Yeah,
way, and some people get like really into them, but it's just like they're only allowed to play the pub if they're performing covers that people know. Where I always thought
yeah.
it'd be kind of beneficial if there was like clubs where were there just to hang out, just to get a drink or whatever, and there was an artist there playing originals. I always thought that'd be kind of beneficial. I wish like something
Yeah.
like that existed. I don't know if that exists in Bristol or Bath or anything.
I mean, it does a little bit, a little bit. There's a few bars that do it. I'm just trying to think, because when we did our tour last year, I mean, I was really blown away by a couple of the venues that we played. One that springs to mind is the Folklore Rooms in Brighton, where we had it wasn't a sellout show, but we had a pretty full house that night, and it wasn't because they knew us, and it wasn't in most cases because they knew True Foxes, who we were playing with that night. It was because they loved that venue, because that venue always has consistently good original music, and there are all these people that showed up. They're all on the mailing list for the place, so that they look at they get the email about what's coming up. They the venue send out emails with videos of the artists that are playing and whatever, and the audience, if they like what they've seen, they'll just turn up, they'll just go, even if they've never seen you before, and that's really fantastic. But that said, that is another venue where the bar is downstairs and the venue is upstairs. So it's like the idea is there, but it's not quite there. We have one place in Bath at the moment that is really it's kind of the best version of pub venue and allowing for original stuff, and it's called The Grapes in Bath. And it's funny because it used to be the smoky old boozer that had needed redecorating for 50 years or something, and nobody would go in there except the regulars, the four regulars who've been there like forever. And then they revamped it a few years ago, and it's now like the place in town where everybody goes, every age group. They have all sorts of music there. On Thursday nights, they have an Irish band that they're not even gigging. They go and they jam there on Thursdays. They face into a circle. They're not there for anybody else, but you get the pleasure of being there with, all these beautiful accordions and fiddles and harmonica players, and it's awesome. It's really great. And we played there a couple of times, and they honestly don't care what music is being played. As long as it's good quality, they let you get on with it. That's fine. That's all you need to do. And it works. That's got to be the busiest bar in Bath. And so if they can do it, why can't more people do it?
Yeah.
I would love that. I'm totally on board with you there.
Yeah, it's something people should look into.
Yeah.
Um, the fun thing I was going to ask is, because I want to let you go on your day. So the fun thing I was going to ask Tom was, a little bit about this sort of record. I don't know how much you're allowed to speak of it at the moment, but if there's any details you can share.
But say again, Aaron.
Well, just for about the third record, so I don't know
The third
how
record,
much of
yeah.
the details you can actually disclose at this point, and whatever
Yeah.
you're allowed to disclose.
Oh no, I can tell you. Yeah, so I mean we're recording it in August at Real World Studios, just outside Bath here, Peter Gabriel's studio, um, with Seb, who is he is in Defra Studio, has a studio of his own just up the road in Frome, but it's a very small boutique one, and we need a bit more space to make our noise. So he's moving his studio into Real World to record us there. He's produced all of our stuff so far. Um, and he's just a superstar. And the song, I think we'll probably end up with, we're trying to whittle it down. We've got up to about 14 or 15 songs. But you never know how much time you're going to end up with in the studio at this end of things, where we don't have £1 million record deals booking it out for 6 months. So it'll be a case of how many songs can we get done in the week that we're there,
Yeah.
to a standard that we want. But there are a couple of very small, intimate, close up to the mic songs that will be going on there. There is also definitely some Ryan Adams has been listening to Whitesnake moments, without doubt. There's definitely this time you'll get a little bit of of sort of Neil Young, and you'll get a little bit of there's just a tiny touch of Aerosmith is definitely creeping in there. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a big record, I think.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Tom. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Anything people should know that I didn't cover?
Oh no, well, couple of things, if you don't mind. The one thing
Absolutely, go
is,
ahead.
it would be amazing if people can be drawn towards our website, youngmartyrs.com. The reason that we put people there is because you can find all our show dates and things, but also you get asked for an email address, and our mailing list is really important to us to getting people along to future gigs and being able to sell merch and things like that. So it's a bit old school, but actually it's really important to us. So if
A
people
lot,
can
a lot
go
of
to,
artists are doing the mailing list now. It's still, I think it is like a great avenue to keep in touch.
I think so. It seems to work. So yeah, that's just at youngmartyrs.com, and then there's a little pop-up will come up automatically for that. Um, and the only other thing, please, come along to any shows. Please give us this. Every time someone listens to a record or turns up to a show or buys a bit of merch, every single little one adds up. It really does. It makes the difference overall. We've got songs that have had a handful of plays on Spotify, a handful of plays on Apple Music, whatever. But we found out the other day that we've had over 60,000 streams overall, which for a band that couldn't gig for like the first year we were together, I'm over the moon with that. So every little bit of attention really helps. And the last thing that I will say, a personal apology to you when I got the email talking about today's interview, I don't think it had your first name on there, and I've been calling you Kavanagh, but I can see that your name is Aaron. I'm so sorry.
That's
I
fine.
didn't mean to be rude. I thought I was
No, that's absolutely fine.
getting it right.
No, actually, one thing I just want to say based on something you said there was about the merch. I think that's a very important thing. Support buy the merch if you like an artist, because that is really like really the best way to for them to earn income, I think. You know what's sad? I don't know if you've encountered this. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on a tangent
No,
before we
not
wrap
at
up,
all.
but um a lot of venues now, I don't know if you've encountered this, are doing merch cuts, are taking percentages off the merch, like to sell in the venue. I don't know if you've encountered that yet, but
Uh,
it's something that's happening a lot now, and people are kind of like calling out venues for doing it. But I'm not expecting you to do that. I'm just wondering if you've encountered that.
Yeah, I've heard of this. It hasn't happened to me yet, and I've to be honest, I find it like, so don't get me wrong, venues have got it really hard these days for the same
Yeah,
reason I said before, because people just don't go out in the same numbers as they used to. I wouldn't want to be a venue owner in this day and age. It must be really, really hard. So I can understand them trying to do what they can to maximize income. However, the only person that earns less money than a venue is the artist. So taking money off them feels like, hang on a minute, you're
yeah,
charging the poorest person in the chain, um, so that it makes it less possible for them to do what they do, and that means that they're going to be less able to come and play in your venue, and then you won't have any music anymore, and it seems so backwards to me. I mean, we still have venues in London in particular that have they will charge you if you don't bring in a certain amount of people, they
yeah,
will charge you for playing there. And I can
yeah,
remember we played that a venue some years ago with my previous band Centerfolds, where it was kind of a racket because we didn't it was a huge venue. They had four acts on, and there was balconies and everything. It was huge, like a three-story venue, and admittedly we didn't fill all the balconies, but there was plenty of people in the room with us. It didn't feel like an empty night. And I was there at the end of the night when the person at the door was taking the money off the bands. They made over £800 off the bands that night. That's before the bar takings, that's before the takings on the door. The bands paid the venue 800 quid that night. And
yeah.
that happens. So the whole taking money off bands for their merch that's crazy. It's just, I do understand where the need is coming from, but that is not the right solution. That seems nuts to me.
No, I agree. I think yeah, it's like the economics of putting on even a gig, like that's something I don't think people appreciate. Even like the smallest gig, the overhead that goes into it, and then there's also the economics of the tickets. You're like, oh, okay, well we have to charge only some amount. So like the venue prices I think have risen, but the actual ticket prices have to kind of remain consistent in order to get people through the door. So
Mhm.
to me, because I know a promoter who puts on shows, and I really have no idea how it's like economically viable at all, because it just seems like for the many people that are coming in for the ticket prices, it seems like at best you're probably breaking even. But I think like for the most part, because then you also have to pay sound engineers, you have to pay like the venue obviously, you have to pay the artists, and it just seems like I don't know how anyone could like recoup from it. I just don't understand. It's definitely not something to go into if you want to be a millionaire.
No, no, Aaron, it's I think you're bang on, and the really sad truth of it is at the moment we don't have a better way of doing this, and anyone who only sort of really listens to mainstream music might not understand this, because they might be looking at sort of, I don't know, Taylor Swift and
Yeah,
you know, Olivia Rodrigo and all the big pop stars and stuff. Um, for one thing, you notice that they're all solo artists because they can't afford to, they can afford to pay session musicians, but you can't guarantee that those same people have a job from tour to tour.
yeah,
But those are the few people that manage to get so much attention for, initially one, two videos or something, that they become stratospheric. But they are the minority. Like the amount of people who are super, super huge who've come through in the last 5 to 10 years, the number is not that great of those people. There are millions of artists still trying to make it, and it's so hard to get through because it's such an expensive thing to do, and we don't have a system really that supports it, because venues can't afford to fund it all, and artists can't afford to fund it all. But the money's got to come from somewhere. So I think where we're at the moment, and it feels like we're approaching a point where someone somewhere must be on the cusp of having a breakthrough and going, I've got it. I know what the
Yeah,
idea is. Because at the moment where we're at is we have to talk to fans, to followers, to potential fans. We have to be really honest with them and basically say, look, please come and buy my, if you're enjoying what, if you're in the room tonight and you didn't mean to be watching us and you've had a good time and if you've enjoyed yourself, please do us a favor and just come buy a CD or a badge or some vinyl if you're that way inclined, or all of it, or at absolute very worst, please come and give us your email address so at least we can tell you when we're playing in your neck of the woods or whatever. And it's, I don't like to think of it as pleading, but you have to be honest and say, like, we can only afford to do this if you come and essentially donate something and take some part of us away with you. That's the only way we can do it. And please go and give us a stream. Please, if you didn't know what to play today, um, and this is why social media, as much as I hate that it has to be all about that, there isn't a way around it, and that's why it's so important. We've got lots of stuff to post about at the moment, and that's our best shot at reminding people we're here and hoping that someone who's scrolling spots one of your posts and goes, "Oh, I've not listened to that one for a couple of days. I'll stick that on," because it all adds up. So I
yeah.
feel like I'm going off at a tangent again, Aaron, but
No,
yeah,
not at all.
there's an answer in there somewhere.
No, that's actually perfect loop. We started talking about social media, we ended.
We did, we did. Yeah. Thank
Perfect.
you for such lovely questions, and you really did your homework. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it, and I really do wish you the best of luck with the re-release of your album, and obviously the one that's coming up. And people should check you out. And like you said, go to Young Martyrs. Is it .co.uk or .com? I want to make sure.
.com,
.com.
youngmartyrs.com. Yeah,
Perfect. So
yeah,
go there and you'll
lovely.
see everything you need.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, though.
Absolutely, and you take it easy.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, so we hope that you enjoyed and would consider subscribing, giving it a like on YouTube, or a rating anywhere else. We also have some exclusive episodes only available on Spotify, which features interviews with the likes of Kim Deal, Ron Mail of Sparks, Jacob Slater of Wonder Horse, Maria Kelly, Gavin Friday, and many more. So check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, thank you for listening and see you next time.